Hi, this is Dr. Fox, licensed psychologist in the state of Texas. And in this video, I'm going to help you identify the severity of your BPD. And this can be really tricky, right? And of course, this is just a video. This is just for you to build insight, whereas you could talk to your therapist about it, or may even encourage you to go see a mental health provider that can do testing or that can help clarify some of the stuff that we're going to go over today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these 9 DSM criteria, and I'm going to put up a scale from absent to mild, moderate, or severe. And I'm going to ask you, right, on a piece of paper to note that number 1, that you may say is severe for me, right? Or number 2, right, when we go through number 2, then, right, oh, this is moderate for me. And what we want to do is we want to build your insight into this. And then at the end, we'll talk about what all this means and putting it all together. Okay, to kind of help you have that insight, because insight empowers you with choice. When you're empowered with choice, then you can use that to develop adaptive strategies to do your life differently, to create the life that you want, and not feel like BPD is constantly interfering with your goals and the things that you want to attain in your life to do it different. So let's get into it. Here we go. Let's start with number 1. And don't forget, right, that you have your piece of paper, okay? And we're going to go from absent, mild, moderate, severe. Here we go. So number 1. Now number 1 is an intense fear of abandonment, even going to extreme measures to avoid real or imagined separation or rejection. And now when we go through this criteria, of course, right, we know you're going to rate it. You're going to write it out. Is it absent, mild, moderate, or severe for yourself? But abandonment can be one of those classic core content areas for a lot of individuals with BPD. Abandonment, rejection fears, these are things that a lot of my clients feel in their gut, right? In their soul. This is such an intense fear for them. And a lot of times it's that core content, that central component that activates other behaviors. Now think about that. Okay, when I feel abandoned or rejected, what am I driven to do? What are my coping behaviors? What are your maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns? You may attack yourself, right? You may then become aggressive with someone else. You may then send like hate texts or whatever it is. So how intense is this? Absent, mild, moderate, or severe. Now let's go to number 2. This is a pattern of unstable, intense relationships. This is where you kind of idealize someone, but then something happens, right? Then they get devalued. Then you see them as less than or terrible or the devil. So how often does this happen? How intense is this experience? How intense are these unstable, intense relationships? Are they absent? Do they not occur? And say, no, all my relationships are stable and cool. Are they mild? Yeah, they happen a little bit. They're not that intense. We resolve it, no problem. Is it moderate? It was like, yeah, sometimes it's pretty rough. And other times, we kind of manage it. Or is it severe, meaning that they're all intense? You have a lot of intense arguments where you're throwing stuff, cursing at each other, all this other stuff. So is it absent, mild, moderate, or severe? Number 3, this is rapid changes in self-identity or self-image that include shifting your goals and values. And you see yourself as bad or as if you don't exist at all. And this goes to that unstable self-image, right? That uncertainty of who you are, what your goals are, what you believe in. And this also attaches to another component that a lot of my clients experience. Whereas if they feel like, well, if I'm not in a relationship, or if I'm not being heard, or if I'm not being recognized, then I don't exist. Then I'm invisible. And that can create a lot of fear, intense fear. And that sense of unstable self-image, if you don't know who you are, how do you know you're here? And how do you know if you're being listened to? So it all factors into this one criteria, this one component. So how intense is that for you? Absent, mild, moderate, or severe. Number 4, this is periods of stress-related paranoia and loss of contact with reality. This can last from a few minutes to a few hours. So what happens is that your stress gets kicked off, right? How high does your stress need to be? And it's different for everybody. Some folks hit a 10 real easy. Some folks only have 2 numbers, 0, meaning just chill, and 10, I'm just losing it. So But there are numbers in between, right? There are numbers. You may just feel the 0 and the 10, but there are numbers in between. Okay, so when we talk about that stress level, you want to think, okay, at what stress level do I feel like people are going to leave me? Do I feel like that people are going to hurt me? People are taking advantage of me? Or that stress becomes so intense that you kind of feel like you're distant from yourself, like you're distant from reality. It's the sense of separation. It's disassociating, essentially. And if you're not sure what this is, I do have a video on disassociation that you might be interested in checking out if you want to learn a little more about it, okay? So again, for this one, those periods of stress-related paranoia and loss of contact with reality, how intense is that? You could even say, how frequently does this occur and how disruptive in my life is it? Is it not disruptive at all, absent? Is it mildly disruptive? Is it moderately disruptive? I know you know the next one. Is it severely disruptive? Okay, so now let's talk about 5. And 5 is impulsive and risky behaviors. This could be gambling, reckless driving, unsafe sex, spending sprees, binge eating, or drug abuse, or sabotaging success by suddenly quitting a job or ending a positive relationship. And these are all sort of impulsive and risky behaviors. But what's interesting about this is that it keeps your BPD in place. In many cases, in many of my clients, what happens is that they feel like they're going on a good trajectory, right? Things are going well, they're helping themselves, they're utilizing some adaptive strategies, they're trying out new coping strategies, branching out, changing their interpersonal circle. And then they get this sense, or this family in the head kind of grabs in and starts saying these things, makes them feel less than, and pushes them back to that BPD comfort zone. And by comfort zone, I mean, it's a good thing, right? It's just where some folks are used to being, right? So it does that, and that impulsive and risky behavior can be fed by that family in the head, where it's destructive enough that you go back to that BPD comfort zone, right? We don't want you there. That's why we're building insight, okay? So how impulsive and risky behavior, how often does this happen, and how destructive is it in your life? Absent, mild, moderate, or severe. So the next one is suicidal threats or behavior or self-injury. This is often in response to fear of separation or rejection. Now, of course, if you're thinking about hurting yourself, if you're thinking about ending your life, it's so important to reach out and get help. And that is critical. First and foremost, we have to know that. Okay? You have to reach out to good resources. I will put a link in the comment section that will provide contact resources, as my videos, which is very nice, are seen all over the world. I put an international suicide prevention contact in the comment section, right? That you can click on that link and it'll send you there to take care of yourself. All right, now back to us building insight into this criteria. Now, how intense and how frequent are these suicidal threats or behavior or self-injury? And it's really important to get an idea as to how reactive this is. Now remember, right, that actually suicidal thoughts and engaging in self-harm, these are actually what are called surface content issues, which is that a lot of times you may have the sense of abandonment, the sense of rejection, the sense of being invisible, of not being recognized, where you have that feeling, and immediately, almost as if by default, you have this thought, well, then I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't exist. Well, I should just end my life. Well, I'm going to hurt myself, or something like that. And sometimes it becomes this default response, a habit in some cases, that you have developed over time. And we want to change that. That's part of what this is about. So when we mark this one, of course, talk about the intensity and also the driving force behind it. Is it absent? If it doesn't exist, that's great, because not everyone with BPD self-harms or has suicidal threats or behavior, okay? So, and some of these criteria you're not going to have, right? So you may not have this one. That's okay. So then you'd mark it as absent. Is it mild, moderate, or severely destructive in your life? Now, the next one is wild mood swings lasting from a few hours to a few days. Now, this can include intense happiness, irritability, shame, or anxiety. Now, this is that criteria that relates to those depressive spirals, is that even though individuals with BPD that don't have major depressive disorder as part of their complex BPD, and if you want to learn more about complex BPD, I have a book out, you can check that out. But going back to the issue at hand is that, so those depressive spirals, that's different than a major depressive episode. It's certainly, it's this sense of dysphoria, the sense of sadness, this sense of negative outlook, but it also is this sense of feeling sad and hopeless. Now you can also spiral up, right? And that would be anxiety, right? Is that something is triggered, something happened, and you have these spirals up. Now, because of these shifts in mood swings, right? And sometimes, it is intense happiness, irritability, shame, or anxiety, that BPD can often be confused with bipolar disorder. And we don't want to do that. And this is that criteria that relates to that. Okay. Now, it is possible for you to have both, certainly. A little over a quarter of individuals with BPD also meet the criteria for bipolar disorder as well. And that's what makes up their complex BPD as well. Okay, so again, if you want to learn more, you can check out that book. But for this video, right, we're talking about ratings, right? So we're going to rate it. So your mood swings, okay? Now we're rating certainly the intensity of those mood swings, but also how impactful they are in your life. Are they absent, right? Do you not have mood swings? Or are they mild, moderate, or severe? And also how impactful they are in your life as well. Number 8, this is ongoing feelings of emptiness. Now, a lot of my clients kind of describe it that they feel like they have this void inside of them, this hole inside of them, that no matter what they do, they can't fill it. And as they struggle with it, as they try to define it, they say, well, it's not a perfect circle. It's more in this odd, ever-changing shape, right? And if you can't really, get the shape down, how do you understand what it is and how would you fill it, right? And I think for a lot of folks who experience this emptiness probably know what I'm talking about. So as we're talking about your emptiness, we want you to rate, is it absent? Do you not have that feeling of emptiness? And some individuals with BPD do not. Or is it mild, moderate, or severe? And then for the last one, number 9, this is inappropriate, intense anger, such as like frequent losing your temper, being sarcastic or bitter, or having physical fights. So how intense is your anger? Maybe you're not an angry person. Not everybody with BPD explodes and has this intense anger. Sometimes there's inner anger, and we want to count that too, because sometimes it can be directed internally at yourself. You could say really negative things to yourself. You could, sometimes self-harm out of feeling degraded or feeling a low sense of self-worth or things like that. And that we can count that here. That can be part of that intense anger that you have. And also outward anger. Outward anger would be, right, you yell and scream at others, maybe you throw stuff, things like that. So it's important to consider that as well. So is this absent, mild, moderate, or severe? Okay, so now that we've gone through these 9 criteria, what I want you to do is, I want you to put them all, right, take a look at them. Which ones are severe, which ones are moderate, and which ones are mild? And then what I want you to do is think about, okay, what core content is associated with my severe, right, criteria, my moderate criteria, my mild criteria. And that will give you insight and say, hey, you know what? When I feel abandoned, my severe, or you could say severe and mild, right? It's not going to be nice and mutually exclusive. There's going to be some overlap. And if there is overlap, right, so some core content, some of your core content areas, when they get triggered, they may impact several criteria, but in some cases they're mild, some cases they're moderate, some cases they're severe. What are those differences? And that's, sometimes it's the person, sometimes it's a situation, right? You need to feed yourself, you need food, right? So you don't act out at work and, maybe you just kind of hold it in, and stuff like that. So it's important, right, then to look at where this is occurring. So I hope that this video has provided you good insight, and I hope that it helps you move forward in building your insight, giving you choices so that you can develop adaptive strategies to manage these criteria that impact your life so negatively. And that will give you greater control over your BPD. And that empowers you. Knowledge is empowerment. Absolutely. Thank you, and have a good day. Bye-bye.